Nice. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Sí, bienvenidos a todos. Just quick comment.
Armando, welcome.
Make sure you please turn on the interpretation before you start with the introductions.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you.
So Vincent, would you like me to turn it on right now?
After we give the instructions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here. We're going to give it just another minute until we get started. But for those of you who are joining us, if you could drop in the chat where you're joining us from and something you'd like to learn about today.
Gracias por estar con nosotros esta noche. Bienvenidos a esta junta. Y para conocernos un poco mejor, si nos pueden dejar un mensaje en el chat de dónde vienen y si tienen algo en particular que quieran aprender el día de hoy.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and turn on interpretation, and I think we can kick things off. We have people joining us from all over the place, and I'm glad you all are here today.
Entonces voy a empezar con la interpretación y tenemos gente de todos lados, de muchos lugares. Bienvenidos a todos.
Great. Thank you. We're here to be talking about sheet mulching, healthy soils, and water savings. And tonight's program is brought to you by a collaboration with Daily Axe Organization and Valley Water.
Entonces el día de hoy estamos trabajando en colaboración con Daily Axe y Valley Water y vamos a estar hablando sobre mantillo de hojas y estrategias para ahorrar el agua. Muchas gracias por atender el día de hoy con nosotros.
So tonight's program is being translated in English and Spanish. In just a moment, the interpretation globe will show up in the bottom right-hand corner, or for some on the upper right-hand corner. Please go ahead and choose your respective language, and then be sure to click mute original audio. We will also be dropping instructions in the chat as folks continue to join.
La sesión de hoy va a ser interpretado en dos lenguajes, inglés y español. Para poder accesar la interpretación, tienen que darle un clic o oprimir el botón del globo que está en la parte inferior derecha o quizás superior derecha, escoger el lenguaje que ustedes quieren y también darle selección a Mute Original Audio.
Thank you. All right, so folks should be seeing interpretation at this time. All right. Well, again, thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Liz, and I'm the Climate Resilience Program Manager at Daily Axe. We're also joined by Corey, who is playing tech support and is an amazing daily actor as well. For those of you who have never heard of Daily Axe before, Daily Axe is a small and mighty environmental education nonprofit based in Petaluma and mainly working throughout Sonoma County, but sometimes beyond. And we're working to provide people with the knowledge, skills, and resources to be able to live a rich and full lifestyle while also having a smaller environmental impact. Daily Axe is working to connect people and build community through our education programs, our action campaigns, and by influencing policies that are addressing the climate crisis. And we're working to create a more livable future for all. Over the last 20 years, our impacts have been far and wide, and we are so grateful for the partnerships that we've been able to make along the way, and for all of you that continue to show up to educate yourselves and who are showing up because you believe in the power of your daily actions. For tonight's program, we are going to have a presentation and then hold all of our questions and answers until the end of the program. If a question comes up for you during the presentation, please go ahead and use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And if you wish to interact with your fellow attendees or your panelists, please go ahead and use the chat box also at the bottom of your screen, and make sure that it is set to either everyone or all panelists and attendees. If you wish to interact with one specific person, then please make sure that the chat is set to that individual's name. Tonight, we're going to be covering a lot of valuable information, starting with different options that you all have for converting your lawn, whether that be through the Our City Forest resource page and programs or through the Valley Water Rebate program. We'll also be chatting about design approaches and plant selections, discussing sheet mulching best practices, briefly covering how to convert your sprinkler system, and then ending with Q&A. Tonight, we are joined by some phenomenal guests. We have Michael from our city forest, who will be leading the majority of the presentation. We have Mary, Nick, and Edna from Valley Water, who will help us field questions about the rebate program and other resources in the area. And I think at this time, I would love to share the screen and pass the mic over to Nick to introduce Valley Water, and then over to Michael to get us started.
Thanks, Liz. My name is Nick Samard. I'm a water conservation specialist here with Valley Water, and we're really excited to offer this program in partnership with Dailyaks and our city forest. Valley Water is a wholesale water retailer that provides 3 core services to nearly 2 million people who live in here and work here in the South Bay. We work in partnership with 15 cities and 13 local water retailers to provide cleaner and reliable water, flood protection, creek and stream stewardship for everyone here in our community in Santa Clara County. Water conservation is essential for ensuring a clean and reliable water supply today and into the future. And we really want to thank you all for joining us to learn about how you can improve your water efficiency, reduce your water use for your landscapes, while still supporting those drought tolerant and native species that we want to keep. Myself and as Liz mentioned, my 2 colleagues will be available to answer all your questions in the chat regarding any of Valley Water rebates. So as you learn from Michael and Liz's discussions, we're happy to help you make the connections to those rebates that we have. So with that being said, again, thank you for joining us all, and I'm going to pass it back to Liz.
Thanks, Nick. I'd actually love to pass it over to Michael.
Hey everybody, my name is Michael. I work for our city forest. I'm the program manager for the Lawn Busters program. I served as an AmeriCorps member with this same program last year. So I'm happy to be here and to talk about how to convert your turf lawn into a drought tolerant landscape. So I work for the nonprofit Our City Forest. Our city forest has a lawn conversion program called Lawn Busters. The Lawn Busters program serves specific socioeconomic communities such as seniors, low-income households, disabled residents, and veterans who get water from the Santa Clara Valley Water District. This program is meant to help people convert turf lawns, which usually have high water needs and offer lower ecosystem benefits, to transform them into more native or more drought tolerant or climate adaptive landscapes using native plants, shrubs, perennials, to kind of foster this understory layer of the urban forest. So you might have heard about our city forest before. We plant lots of trees. We've been an active organization since 1994, but we also not only serving the canopy layer of the urban forest, we're also kind of serving that understory layer. If you think about our urban ecosystem as kind of a mosaic, lots of little squares that everybody has to manage on their own, lots of private property. We create an ecosystem here, and that ecosystem could be filled with native shrubs and perennials that offer pollinator habitat and habitat for migrating insects and birds, or other little mammals, and those sorts of habitats are healthier, not just for those migrating animals or animals that we live with, but for us as well. Shrubs and drought tolerant landscapes sequester more carbon, they use less water, and they just offer more benefits to everybody collectively. Whether you own property or don't own property, it helps us all when we all work together to create drought tolerant landscapes and get that kind of turf out of our city, which doesn't really match with our climate here in California. So we work to just create this biodiversity in the urban forest, promote this groundwater recharge, and transform landscapes into something that is both more aesthetically, interesting, and is more dynamic, has more layers, has more biodiversity. So like I said, with our program, we focus on these low income veterans, those with disabilities, and seniors. However, that's not the only option available to you. There's also the Valley Water Rebate Program, which is such an awesome program to get money from Valley Water to convert your lawn. So when we think about designing our yard, definitely we take measurements and create a square footage to figure out our plan. What do you want? Do you want a path going through your yard? Do you want kind of a wild appearance in your yard? Do you want a sitting area? You know, these are important things because a lot of our shrubs can live many decades. If you think about the lifespan of a manzanita shrub, it's important that we try not to move that guy once we plant them. So creating a plan is a very important step to this whole process. So mark out, I love working with grid paper. So you'll see a lot of grid paper on these sheets with design. Nowadays, there's some softwares out there that you can use to help with your design. My team uses SketchUp, but it seems every couple of years a different software comes out. So play around with different softwares, or do it old school and get some grid paper and try to make it yourself. So we do get a total square footage. If you think about how much water is used for a square foot of lawn, it can be quite significant. Our turf, the type of the species of grass that we use for turf, has pretty shallow roots. So you might have noticed that you need to water it. And some people pretty much stop watering it during the summer, and you get that sort of dead sort of landscape. It's not alive. It doesn't host anything. It's just sort of dormant and sitting there. So if you think about turning every single square footage into drought tolerant landscape, it's significant. So we get these coverage value points because with the Valley Water Rebate Program, they require that 50% of the converted lawn is covered with plants. So we try to get this total area. So in this example, we have 722 square feet. So half of that value needs to be covered with plants. So like I said, I use grid paper and I think about each box as a square foot. So I kind of create a design, and your smaller shrubs will have smaller square footage coverage values. If you think of something like a blue-eyed grass, which is native Cisentium bellum, that's just a small little perennial. It's just a little grass. It'll have a small coverage value. And if you think about something that's bigger, like a manzanita, Arctostaphylos is the genus, those guys get really big and they will have a larger coverage value. So making sure that you're thinking about your big kind of that shrub layer and then your ground cover layer is really important. We get these coverage values from the Santa Clara Valley Water District itself. So they've created a page that has hundreds, possibly thousands of different plants. And you can check those coverage values to add up to reach that 50% that you need. Their spreadsheet is really great. It has Latin names. It has what type of form the plant takes, whether it's a shrub, a ground cover, a vine, and also if it's native to California or not. So the coverage values are very specific, and you need to meet those in order to get that rebate. So pay attention to how big that shrub or that perennial is. We at our city forest host a community nursery. Our community nursery is here in San Jose. It's off of, it's at 1000 Spring Street, right by the airport. We use this to kind of filter that Valley Water list. That Valley Water list is quite extensive. So we use our own nursery to kind of cut that down a little bit. So it helps us make decisions. We have lots of California natives there, and we have lots of resources to learn about different native shrubs at our community nursery. Although nonprofit nurseries aren't your only option, definitely check out other commercial nurseries. They usually have larger selections and they have different price points. So a lot of like my community nursery at our city forest, we go by a suggested donation. And our shrubs are all taken care of by volunteers and by volunteer labor. But sometimes those commercial nurseries have bigger plants, have different varieties that you can shop for. So it's definitely worth shopping around. I'm one of those people that just goes to nurseries on my weekends just because I love just looking around to see what's out there. And maybe just take notes, go with a clipboard and some note paper. What flowers do you like? What forms do you like? Do you like the bark on that one? Make sure to read tags and ask questions about how much water they need or how long it takes to establish, stuff like that. So it's tons of fun to kind of do your research and check out which plants suit your fancy. once I have a general list, once I've created my short list of plants, maybe it's a list of 20 to 30 plants instead of a list of 800 to 1,000. I'm working with just this short list, and I try to create a design in this way where I'm putting in the big guys first. I usually try to design the large plants, whether you're installing a tree or something like a red bud, Cercis occidentalis is native. Those will take up more space. So always plan for your big guys first to give them enough space to grow. A lot of times from your nursery, you're adopting a baby plant. You're adopting a little teenager plant, and he's going to get bigger. It's going to grow. So make sure to look at the spacing and give it enough space to grow. If you crowd your plants too much to create your instant landscape, you'll regret it in 2 years because all your plants are going to grow together and compete. Competition is good in some ways because we want to limit weeds. So once I have some competitive growth, it fills in the space and weeds can't get in, but we don't want it competing with our desired plants. So giving enough space for each plant is very important. This is all subjective. You can read lots of design books. It's really whatever suits your fancy that matches the coverage value for Valley Water. It's difficult to teach design. It's kind of whatever floats your boat, really, and whatever you want to do with your landscape. So in this example, someone wanted this walking path. Obviously, they have this large shrub here. So that guy probably went in first. We have some hummingbird sage, some salvia up front. So there's no real rules to this, although generally humans like this rule of odds, groups of 3s and 5s and 7s just sort of meet our eyeball well. Also, thinking about your bloom times, you don't want your garden to put on a big show in April and then kind of have no color or interest the rest of the year. So grab something that's going to bloom in fall, grab something that's going to bloom in spring, maybe grab a winter bloomer just to kind of mix it up. So there's always a focal point in your landscape. And then consider your colors. Are you going to have clashing colors? I don't really care too much about clashing colors, but maybe you do. Maybe your oranges and your blues aren't going to suit your fancy. So some people like cool colors or warm colors. So check your color wheel and remember your 3rd grade art class to check your complementary or supplementary colors there. And then other things that people do like pathways or dried riverbeds or bird baths, something like that. And then there's different forms, and this is on the Valley Water list as well. It's really easy to look at whether it's a shrub, a ground cover, a perennial. When I say a shrub, that's something that puts on bark, something that gets woody, something that I would have to shape and prune over time. When I say like an herbaceous perennial, that's something that might even die back to the soil during our summertime when things get stressful for plants, like my blue-eyed grass, Cicinchum bellum. That might die back to the soil every year, but then it comes back. So your hummingbird sage might do this. It doesn't form any bark. It's a squishy type growth. Your ground cover is something that's going to spread that never stands upright. It's something like your yerba buena that is just going to kind of spread around the landscape. So pay attention to those forms when you're designing. I've already mentioned the Arctostaphylos, the manzanita, a beautiful native. You can find it when you're hiking in those oak woodlands. Ceanothus or your California lilac. Ceanothus is the genus. Really beautiful. It just hit its stride about 2 weeks ago. So if you saw all those blue blooms around the area, it's probably Ceanothus. Great for bees. The one in the county park, I can almost hear it because of all the bees. The buzzing that comes around when you're near it is really fun. I've already mentioned the salvias. If I don't know a shrub, if I can't ID it here in California, I guess salvia, because chances are it is a salvia. So if another one great for pollinators, there's the blue-eyed grass there. There's our sticky monkey flower on the right, blue-eyed grass second to the right. Sticky monkey flower, I can find it when I'm hiking along the coast. So if I go on a hike near Pacifica or something, I'm bound to see sticky monkey flower over there. Tons of fun. And we have all of these at our community nursery. And I'm sure other nurseries, commercial nurseries around the area also have these. They're pretty common. And then trees, some turf, some landscapes won't be able to host a tree. It might be too big, but they're great focal points and they can give you that shade, especially if you're considering a lawn conversion to provide shade for your home. If your home faces like southwest, it's really nice maybe to have a shade tree that will shade your windows or something during those hot days in the summertime. So trees will take up more space, both in the air and in your landscape. So consider those carefully. This is the native holly leaf cherry tree. It's in the Prunus genus. It doesn't get too tall. It's flowering right now, actually. It looks really nice. So sheet mulching. How does Lawn Busters get rid of all that turf? Well, my team isn't out there with shovels. We're not digging it up, guys. That is way too much work. I'm not digging up turf grass. It's just going to have rhizomous growth that's going to come back anyways. So do your back a favor and sheet mulch. So what is sheet mulching? It's just basically smothering the grass with layers of medium, of stuff, of material. For our city forest, we always pick some sort of material that's going to break down, that's going to decompose. So there are some groups that might use that landscape fabric or might use a sort of material that doesn't decompose. These can work long-term, but they don't break down. Eventually, someone, whether it's you or the next homeowner, will have to remove that plastic layer that's sitting in the soil. So we usually don't recommend this. We try to do something that's going to decompose, something that's going to condition the soil, something that's going to add back to the ecosystem. Because sometimes using too much plastic material, it's just going to sit there and it's going to kind of break away and fall apart anyways, and it's not going to work for you. So check with your landscape contractor, or if you're doing it yourself. I mean, cardboard is free. It's really great. So what we do is we just smother the weeds with a layer of cardboard. We do remove the plastic tape that comes on cardboard sometimes, because again, that's plastic. It's not going to break down. So we're going to lay that cardboard right on top of the grass, of any existing weeds and turf that's there. We don't purchase cardboard. We kind of go dumpster diving for it. We kind of go around asking the community. Everybody gets packages, right? You know, especially large companies. Like sometimes we go to the bike shop. Each bike gets packaged in a giant cardboard case, or the refrigerator store. That's another good one. They have big cardboard packages because everything comes in this big cardboard thing. So just look around your community for some cardboard. Try to get some scouts or something, or at your church, have a little fundraiser where you're like, bring in cardboard, just bring it in the next few weeks, and you'll be surprised. You might get too much. And as always, we always call 811 before you dig. This is a free service. This is just to make sure, especially for those of us in urban settings, that we don't hit any gas lines or water lines. So this is a free service. You could submit tickets online now. And usually you get a response pretty quick. Those companies know where their lines are, and usually you can get a response quickly. So in our landscape process, we do dig a trench. So this is a water mitigation technique. Whenever it rains a whole bunch here, sometimes the water races across the surface of the soil. So we have a lot of compact soils here in urban settings that don't accept the water so quickly. So we dig this trench. And this trench will help water enter the soil systems, percolate into the soil, recharging our groundwater. So yes, you might be digging a trench for the 4 rain events we get every year, but it is significant because if those rain events, if all the water just runs into the storm drain and goes into the bay, it's gone. If that water enters soil systems, it moves so much slower and it recharges our groundwater systems, and it's significant. So this trench, while maybe a lot of work, it's worth it. So in case—
Once you are ready to start, the first step is to dig a trench along the perimeter of the lawn conversion site. Use a shovel to create a gradually sloping trench that is 12 to 18 inches wide and 6 to 8 inches deep. This prevents water runoff and recharges the groundwater. Be cautious of large roots, underground pipes, and electrical wires.
After that trench is dug, we lay down the cardboard. So we make sure to overlap the cardboard a little bit. If you don't overlap it enough, those weeds want to live. They'll push up through and they'll search for the light. So make sure your cardboard, especially if it has lots of flappies, are overlapped enough to make a solid layer so that if weeds or something are looking, they're going to hit cardboard several times and they're going to run out of energy. Weed seeds only have a couple days worth of energy inside them. They're little energy packets. So they're going to try and they're going to get all aloided and then die out. They're not going to be able to reach the sunlight in time. So making sure that you lay those cardboard layers over top of each other a little bit so that those flaps that we have with cardboard packaging overlap. And throughout this process, we are dampening the soil layers. We are including a little bit of water in each layer. That way, the soil and the area is conditioned for our planting later in the day.
When the trench is finished, the next step is to cover the entire lawn with cardboard, including the trenches. Each cardboard piece should overlap the surrounding cardboard pieces by at least 1 foot in every direction. The cardboard serves as a weed barrier and will break down over time, producing future nourishment for the garden.
Is there an echo in here? I'm just kidding. It's really important also to overlap that cardboard with the trench. The trench is a part of the landscape, and you do want to smother those weed seeds that might be sitting in the trench there. So it does overlap, and the trench does fill in with our soil amendment or something like that we put on top. So
when the trench When you are ready,
we use a soil amendment. This is like a hybrid between mulch and soil. It's high in carbon content and isn't true soil in that it doesn't have a high mineral content, but we do use this as a soil conditioner. A lot of our soils in urban settings are disturbed. If you think about how development happened through your community, maybe, the bulldozer gave you, some bedrock or gave you some soil that isn't perfect. Also, the area was used for agriculture about 100 years ago. So oftentimes agricultural soils are kind of lacking in some nutrients. So this is just an extra layer to help add back some nutrients. So if you think about it just being like this middle ground between mulch and broken down material, it's a finely shredded material. It decomposes really quick, but this just adds another layer on top of the cardboard to help smother out those weeds. We get this from Zanker Landscape Material. They operate close to the Alviso area. They will deliver it in your driveway. So that's what we do. We don't like move this stuff around. We try to do as least work as possible, right? We get this delivered into the driveway of the client. So you can get that service yourself. It's not reserved for commercial companies. And I'm sure other landscape companies, Evergreen might be another one, they might deliver landscape materials as well. So you don't have to go to like the hardware store and buy bags and bags and bags of mulch. Reduce the plastic that's used and just get a bulk order. After that soil amendment is in, we install the plants. Like I said, we use a lot of the plants from our community nursery. We plant it in that soil amendment. And sometimes when you're planting, you will hit the cardboard. We cut an X in the cardboard. We don't cut a hole in the cardboard, right? All of those weed seeds that we just smothered are gonna find a way, or they're looking for a way to grow to the sun. So if you cut a circle, in like 12 months, you're gonna have all these weeds right around the trunk of your shrub. So we cut an X to like lay the flaps along the roots of the plant that we just planted.
When you are ready to plant, choose a tool to use that can cut through the soil, cardboard, and lawn. Make an X through the cardboard and then clear out enough soil to install your plant.
And then just a tip when you're installing plants from either our nursery or any nursery, actually, some of the roots might be quite root bound in the pot. It depends how long that plant has been inside the pot. So be sure to kind of scratch up the roots, tickle the roots, make the roots look not like the shape of a pot. You want them to grow down into the soil. You want to promote downward growth. So make sure you scrape up those roots, kind of be rough with it. You might be surprised how rough you can be with some of those roots, but don't allow it to keep the same shape as the pot in the ground, or else you'll be able to just lift it out in 12 months because the roots will continue to grow in circles. The roots don't really have a great brain. They're just sort of following the water. So tease them out, pull them out from that pot shape, and then make sure when you're watering them nice and deep. to train them, because you're training the roots to grow down into the soil.
When you are ready,
After after the plants are installed, we mulch. So we do another 6 inches of mulch. Again, we get that mulch from Zanker and just get it delivered. It's kind of a thick layer of mulch, and you will have noticed that the landscape has increased in height a little bit. We've added like a few inches of material here, but it does flatten out. So when we're using these wheelbarrows and dumping the soil amendment, the sheet mulch, everything, we've added air, we've fluffed it up basically. So over time, especially after one rain event, you'll notice it sinks down. So it does look a little raised at first. It sinks down within 5 weeks. And you'll notice some shrubs will start growing within those 5 weeks. It's pretty instant, like a shrub it really nestles in, and you can tell that it likes its space. It starts to green up, it starts to look bigger. You'll be really surprised if you take a picture at the first day after a lawn bust, and then 6 weeks later, you'll notice the difference. Yeah, so all these layers just help smother that old growth, blocks that turf from coming up. And it does allow some of those perennials, such as hummingbird sage, to kind of spread and take up the space, or your yerba bueno can also spread and kind of take up the space. After that, there's just sort of the maintenance of having, a drought tolerant landscape, depending on some of the plants that you've installed. Some of the shrubs might need pruned every now and then. You can prune shrubs to kind of whatever shape is desired. If you want it to look more like a tree, you can remove some of those lower temporary branches and it will look more like a tree. If you want it to kind of stay lower, you can get more lateral growth and kind of stay lower, like someone would prune a fruit tree. There's lots of different ways to prune. And just think about the shape that you want. We always remove the 3Ds, so you can always remove the dead, damaged, or diseased material off a shrub. So those are choices I don't need to make as a horticulturist. We're just removing that dead material. And there's some great resources online. Check out web pages from master gardeners. Check out the University of California extension pages. There's some great resources on YouTube. If you just type in like how to prune a rose bush, there are hundreds of videos how to prune a rose bush. So, and I find videos more informative sometimes than pictures, just because it's actively showing you how to do it. So I have a lot of fun just like looking for some fun resources about pruning shrubs or grasses or things like that. I'm a big plant nerd. So this is kind of what it looks like. We had a lawn here. This person was watering their lawn. You can see how green it is. And we busted it. They put in this little path. They have some blue fescues here. They have lots of different grasses, some salvia, hot lip sage there. So I think this is an improvement. I think it's much more inviting. It's much more dynamic. It offers different colors. It offers different layers. And they got in this little walking path, which is much more inviting to someone, your mailman, anybody who interacts with the front of your house. This is just much more inviting, and that is it for lawn conversions. In case anybody is interested, we have a web page here. That's ourcityforest.org/DIY lawn bust. That's do it yourself, where we have lots of YouTube videos that you can find for each step in this process. There's a link to our Eventbrite page. We host a lawn bust. We're doing a lawn bust every week. If you guys want to come see the whole process, come out and volunteer some time with us. We also host DIY workshops. This is funded by Valley Water. They're helping us help you. So come, if you participate in one of these workshops, you can get 50% off from our community nursery over on Spring Street. So just by coming to this workshop and helping us bust a lawn, you can dramatically reduce your costs for funding your own lawn conversion right there. So we have these workshops every month and we do lawn busts every week. So come out and say hi, ask questions, look at some plants that you like or whatever you need help with, we're here. We also offer mock designs. So if you guys are interested, it's only $30 to get sort of a mock design. We just take a satellite image of your landscape and we give you some ideas, a little springboard to work off of. So check out this webpage. It has lots of resources, as well as the Valley Water page. that has a lot of resources too for different contractors that you can find that participate with the Valley Water List. There's lots of tools out there for you guys to use, and I'm happy to answer any more questions. I'll put my work email in the chat, and I'm happy to stick around and keep chatting, because like I said, I'm a big plant nerd and I would love to answer any questions that people have.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. And I also want to reiterate for folks, we are going to be sending all of these resources in a follow-up email. So we'll be sure to highlight Valley Water's resources and our city forest. And thank you for that thorough introduction to the sheet mulching process. If you couldn't tell from that presentation, this is a very do-it-yourself technique. I'm going to go ahead now and just briefly cover how you can be how you can be converting your sprinkler system to accommodate drip irrigation. And maybe by a head nod, you all can see my presentation correctly. Awesome, thank you. So again, briefly just going to cover how you can convert your sprinkler system to drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is what is most likely watering those plants that our city forest installed after the sheet mulch process. So when you are looking to convert your sprinkler system, the very first step is going to be to identify where your sprinklers are. During one of those first steps to preparing for the sheet mulch process, when you're edging, this is a great time to identify where your sprinklers are, because most of the time your sprinklers are going to be on the perimeter of your landscape. If you don't know where all of your sprinklers are, you can manually turn on your system by using your irrigation time clock or by turning on your valve right outside of your house where your irrigation system is set up. And then we'd recommend that you have flags readily available so that you can very clearly identify where your sprinklers are. I'd also suggest walking your landscape so that you can look and listen to see if there are any sprinklers that might not be popping up all of the way, but you're seeing water bubbling up. Be sure to mark that sprinkler as well. Your next step is going to be to choose the sprinkler that you want to convert, meaning this is going to be the starting point for your irrigation. We're going to refer to that sprinkler as the chosen one. So I would suggest that you look at your landscape, really observe which sprinkler is going to be in the best position to most effectively run irrigation tubing to your plants. Once you've identified that sprinkler, it's now time to cap the rest of your sprinklers. We want to cap those sprinklers so that no water comes through them. What you're going to do is, after you've observed where your sprinklers are, you're going to identify the make and model of the sprinklers that you have on your landscape. Every landscape is different, so be sure that you're taking a look at every single sprinkler that you've identified. Then you're going to want to go to the irrigation store, and they will be able to help you determine what type of capping mechanism is going to be the best for your landscape and your sprinklers. So like on the left-hand side here, you see a simple cap that's just plugged right into the sprinkler base. In other circumstances, you might actually need to dig out your sprinkler and use a piece that will stop the water right at the main line of your irrigation system. After you capped all your sprinklers, it's now time to convert your chosen sprinkler. While you're at the irrigation store, you can also be purchasing this very simple and inexpensive conversion kit. A conversion kit is going to come with a pressure regulator, a filter, and all of the transition pieces, like right here, all of the pieces that you need in order to easily tie in drip irrigation. You're also going to want to be sure that you know where this conversion piece is. So we recommend that you purchase a small irrigation box just to cover that irrigation conversion piece and to protect it from the elements. All right, so now you should have a system of sprinklers where, again, water is only coming through that single chosen sprinkler that you have converted. So now what? Well, now you have the ability to design an irrigation system that is going to be best suited for your landscape, and that's likely going to be dependent on your soil type, your plant's watering needs, as well as the topography of your space. We would typically suggest that you install drip irrigation after you've completed your planting. That way the irrigation can be brought directly to your plants. And we'd also suggest maybe doing a top layer of mulch or raking aside mulch and placing your irrigation in that little depression so that you can cover your lines and ensure that moisture is being kept on your site and that the plants nearby are going to receive that water. If you do choose to cover your irrigation lines, just be sure that you have a good landscape design so that you can look back at where your irrigation is laid, just in case you need to troubleshoot in the future or any repairs need to be made. And if anybody has any familiarity with irrigation, you're probably aware that there are so many different types of irrigation. There are so many different ways that you can design a drip irrigation system with water efficiency in mind. And for the sake of this program, I'm just going to keep it very high level, and I'm not going to go into any more detail about irrigation at this time, but we will be sending, again, follow-up resources and a number of different events that you can tune into to learn about what type of irrigation system is going to be best for you, as well as how you can efficiently program an irrigation timer so that it keeps your plants healthy, but also does not waste water. And I'll be sure to share that in the follow-up email. And at this time, we are actually ready to do some Q&A. I noticed that there were a couple questions already in the chat. So I'm going to stop my share and maybe we can go ahead and review what's in the chat currently, or excuse me, what's in the Q&A currently. So this will be probably mostly for you, Michael, but also for anybody for Valley Water. We have Casey asking, do you recommend inserting a deep watering pipe next to trees to prevent roots from damaging sidewalks or hardscapes?
I love this question. I get it all the time.
Nice.
So that pipe sometimes that you see that goes down next to trees, it does have some advantages. It sends water down to the roots of the tree. However, like I said earlier, the roots are trained to go where the water is. So if you pulled up that pipe in 5 to 10 years, guess where all the roots are? They're going to be shoved right on the bottom of that pipe. They're all going to like grow around it and wrap around the bottom of that, because that's like their water source. So at our city forest, we don't include that pipe. What we do is try to do a big berm. It's a donut shaped raised mulch / soil layer around the tree. And what this does is when you water your tree, it holds the water at the roots for that first few seconds or minutes it takes to percolate into the soil. So we do have a clay-like soil here in the valley and around the area, and it will resist accepting water at first. So this berm creates like a, I don't want to say, some of my coworkers call it a cereal bowl. You're kind of creating this bowl of water that allows the water to go into the soil slowly. Those pipes, like I said, we kind of don't want to install plastic into our soil systems. No one ever is going to come around to remove this plastic. So I'm sure you've seen it walking up and down the streets of cities in all of America. Infrastructure that is not maintained, that is abandoned, that is just no one's but everyone's problem. So all of this plastic in the soil, we really only want to put it there if we are maintaining it. So if we're doing irrigation, hopefully as the homeowner, you're looking at that irrigation, you're watching it every year. That's your plastic in the soil, and there's some accountability there. So usually I don't recommend putting those pipes in because they're often just abandoned and left there, and they just collect roots at the bottom of them anyways. What I think is better is a nice berm that concentrates water at the roots. We recommend 15 gallons of water every week for the first year that you plant a tree, especially June to September. If you think about a potted plant, those roots are handicapped. They're not developed. So what you have to do as the steward of the tree or your landscape, train the roots to grow down. Like I said, roots can be trained. Water those shrubs about 1 gallon a week, trees 15 gallons a week to teach them. Keep going down, buddy. Keep going down into the soil. We don't want shallow lateral growth. I just did this, right? Shallow lateral growth. Where's our sidewalks in our urban systems? Right here, right? At shallow lateral growth. So that's when we have trees ripping up our sidewalks. It's because we've trained that tree that water is shallow. So grow your roots shallow. So just like the tops of trees, bottoms of trees can be trained. So we can teach them, keep growing down into the soil layers. We actually have kind of a high water table here in the valley. And some trees can actually even reach that water table, especially north of San Jose. They will have all the water they need. We just have to teach them, the water's down there, buddy, keep going. So great question.
Great answer too. Thank you so much, Michael. I also want to emphasize, you're talking about plastics in our landscape and in our soil. Sheet mulching is a really great alternative to landscape fabric. I think a lot of sites you will see a black weed cloth. I just wanted to uplift, if you can avoid that at all costs, please do. All that does is break down into millions of different microplastics that is contaminating our soils, ultimately probably ending up in our waterways, and certainly not contributing to the habitat that we hope to increase through our sheet mulch and planting process. We have a number of questions that have been answered, but I also want to uplift this one by Pat. This question was directed to you, Michael, but Nick answered it quite well. Pat asks, when you plant 50% of your property, is it at the size it comes in, or is it 50% once it grows in? And I just want to mention what Nick responded, because I think others might have this question as well. But Nick mentions that the 50% coverage value is coverage at full maturity. I felt that was important to bring up. We also had another question. Where's it?
No, sometimes when we finish the bust, the landscape does still look a little sparse. But like I said, you're planning that big circle on your design, that Nick is right, that's the mature size. So you might plant a little baby manzanita that's only 6 inches tall. That manzanita is going to grow to an 18-foot tall shrub within 10 years. So we have to have some patience. These are living things. These are things that they're storing carbon. It's becoming the tissue of the plant. It's a good thing. We want it to be storing that carbon, putting on growth, and sometimes it just does take a little bit of patience, especially for those manzanitas, oaks, ceanothus, any of those woody shrubs are gonna take a little bit more time. You'll notice the herbaceous stuff grows a lot faster than your woody stuff because it doesn't need to put as many carbon into building structure. It can just allow itself to die and regrow from the roots. So have patience with the size of those woody shrubs.
Nice, thank you. So we have another question here about turf grass that is growing rhizominously, and Pat cannot seem to kill it. They're wondering if it's going to grow through the cardboard and the mulch after you sheet mulch. They've mentioned that they have tried solarizing, but that it continues to come back. And solarizing would have been what I suggested. And for anybody who is not familiar with that process, solarizing typically looks like you are laying a UV treated, typically black plastic along your landscape. You are covering the perimeter so that it's held down on your landscape, and you're putting it in place during the hottest months of the year. So typically during the summertime, maybe leaving it for if you can leave it for 6 months, leave it for 6 months. After you remove that landscape plastic, ideally the weed seeds and the roots are fried. And what we sometimes do when we have the physical ability is we will remove that soil. We will dig down the soil about 6 inches if we can to just completely remove it out of the landscape. I do recognize that it can be quite labor intensive, but that's what Dailyx has done for some of our larger landscapes that have rhizominous, like Bermuda grass or crabgrass, for example. And I have found when you solarize and remove a large chunk of the soil, it typically is keeping those weeds at bay. But I'd be curious, Michael, if you have any other suggestions or anything to add.
I've been with our city forest for 2 years, and that hasn't been a complaint yet. Sometimes the perimeter of the landscape has weeds because the cardboard has to end somewhere. But inside the landscape, I've never had anybody say that weeds have come back, because with a layer of cardboard plus 7 inches of material, there's not enough stored energy in the root systems of these plants to push through 7 inches to interact with the landscape. We really are smothering it. We're covering it both from the sun and from accessing any of the light rains that we get or anything like that. So I've never had anybody come up and complain about weeds in the landscape, only on like the perimeters where the edges of the cardboard are.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up a good point that I have seen the same thing, weeds typically coming around that edge. And it is on the landscape owner to do that maintenance, to get those weeds, to pull those weeds right when you see them. If you do not, it gives them an avenue to breed and then spread. There are also other factors that are out of our control, whether that be dispersal from animals or birds or insects, or even landscape machinery or your neighbor's yard, for example, in a big gust of wind. There are avenues where weed seeds can still be spread on your landscape. But I do want to mention, in my experience, sheet mulching is not a foolproof process and it does not eliminate your weeds. So there is still a little bit of maintenance to be done, but it's a beautiful way to interact with your landscape. Good question. We have Dottie asking if you can use newspaper instead of cardboard. Their area is a small patio.
The newspaper will definitely decompose faster. So I would do multiple layers of newspaper, but newspaper and cardboard are kind of made out of the same material. I would just do multiple layers of newspaper. It will break down fast. It'll be gone within, 6 months. That newspaper will be gone. So it might do well for like a small little area, but definitely layer up. Do like many, many, many sheets. If you think about the thickness of a piece of cardboard, that should be your thickness of newspaper. But it should break down just as cardboard does and add back to the soil. I've done newspaper with asparagus fields before. When I worked at a farm, we would sheet mulch with newspaper and hay. So it does work. You just need lots of layers.
Nice. Yeah, great suggestion. I also love how you did mention the recycled cardboard opportunity. That's a great resource. Bike stores, appliance stores, Costco, huge swaths of cardboard. And sometimes it's actually easier to have different size and shapes, especially if you already have existing plants on your landscape. It makes it much easier to sheet mulch around those plants. We have Rich asking if the perimeter trench remains after you're done.
So for our city forest, it gets filled in with that soil amendment. So the trench is there in that there's no native compact. You can kind of feel it. If you step on it, it does depress a little bit, but it fills in with cardboard, the soil amendment, and the mulch. So when you step back and look at the landscape, it looks like there's no trench, but the water moving through your landscape falls into that trench just because we've added more porosity around that outer layer.
Nice, thank you. We have Casey asking, how often do these gardens need to be maintained and fertilized? How would you recommend fertilizing?
So for most trees and shrubs, we don't fertilize. The native soils here, I mean, this is a lot of agricultural land. Clay-like soils usually have ample nutrients. However, sometimes in the urban setting, something happened where you got some bedrock or you got some sea layer in your landscape. So I would recommend a soil test before I ever introduced added nutrients to your landscape. You can get qualitative tests from like a landscape store or Home Depot. You put the soil in the shaker and you shake it. Dark red is high nitrogen, light pink is low nitrogen. I'm sure you've seen those. You can also do quantitative tests. There's some soil labs in our area. You can send a little baggie of dirt and a check for like $50 and you send it to the lab and they'll give you a quantitative number and maybe some recommendations. They'll give you pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and maybe they will identify if you have any contaminants. So sometimes maybe the past homeowner has put down a chemical that isn't going away, that's just lingering. And you're like, why is my shrub dying? Well, a soil test might give you a clue. But usually we don't fertilize because our cardboard, soil amendment, and mulch is breaking down, is adding nutrients back into the soil. So we're mimicking a natural soil system where debris is falling. Like if you go hiking in the Santa Cruz Mountains, debris is falling, covering up bare soil, decomposing, adding nutrients back into the soil. So kind of creating that cyclical sort of ecosystem. So I do recommend a soil test if you are having problems because it might happen, especially in urban settings. But generally, we don't fertilize. That all of that work we did with the soil amendment, the mulch, that is our fertilizer.
Nice, thanks, Michael. We had somebody asking if we can have more than one chosen sprinkler for that conversion piece. For this particular question, I would not normally advise that you could have a second converted sprinkler. If for any reason you needed to have another line, whether that be because of the size of your landscape or because of varying water needs of your plants, I would likely recommend a different type of conversion, which might be a little bit more involved and mean accessing the valves that your sprinklers are currently on so that you can have two different lines going at different watering times. Again, since irrigation can be so complicated and dependent on various different site conditions, Pat, if you want to reach out to me individually or if you want to attend some of our follow-up webinars, I think we'll be able to address that question in a little bit more detail. Maybe this could be a question for, well, really anybody, but it's seemingly directed at the folks with Valley Water. Are there any support services to help homeowners through the rebate process?
Yeah, so I'd go ahead and I can go ahead and answer that. So essentially, if you're interested in converting your lawn or busting your own lawn, and maybe you don't qualify for the lawn or the Our City Forest Lawn Busters program, but you still want to participate and you'd like to take advantage of the rebate opportunity. Luckily for you, you've just watched the exact process as what Michael just showed you of what we would require. So we would ask. It's not required to sheet mulch, but it is highly encouraged to sheet mulch because it's the most environmentally friendly way to remove the lawn. Putting the 50% plant coverage requirement, just how like Michael spoke of and how we discussed earlier in the plant coverage topic would be the requirement. Up to 1,500 square feet would be the maximum allowed square footage for the rebate program. And then mulching on top or putting gravel, a river rock, but at least 2 inches thick as per part of the rebate program would be the last requirement. So essentially what we're looking for is that the lawn has been removed. There's no exposed soil. So that's where the mulch is going to come in, and that your 50% plant coverage requirement has been met. And so, as I just stated, Michael just went over the whole process of it. I'm going to go ahead and throw the link to the application in the chat. We also have an email called conservation@valleywater.org, and I can put that in the chat as well. That email would be going to our whole conservation team. And so if you have any questions, we can either set up a time to talk with you or just answer all those questions through email. We also have the Water Conservation Hotline, and that's where you can call to talk with a representative during business hours for any landscape rebate program information you might be interested in. And we can walk you through the whole steps of the process. And then our last newest resource here, and I'm going to link this in the chat as well. And at the end of all this, we're going to be sending it out, as Liz said earlier. We have this new program we're going to have called the Office Hours. So what we're going to do is have a 1-hour Zoom session once a week, and you can join on that Zoom session. And whether you're in the middle of your project, you're at the beginning of your project, or you haven't applied and you just want more information, it's a good, similar to how like a professor would have office hours, good time to chat with our staff to walk you through that process. So I can also share all those resources and links in this box. We also have watersavings.org that has all of our water conservation programs that we offer here at Valley Water, everything from indoor, outdoor water conservation. We have free products from our e-cart that you can order that are all water conservation tools and appliances for absolutely free, be sent to you in Santa Clara County. And then we also have some landscape resources and guides and some tree care tips, because I know that was another really popular topic here today. Anything that you may need. So if you have any other questions, I'm going to throw all the information in the chat. But our team would be more than happy to reach out and help you.
Nice. Thank you, Nick. What an amazing wealth of resources you all are here today. Thank you. So we have just a few more minutes. I'm going to highlight just 1 or 2 more questions. Pat has a question about through the rebate process. It asked they're asking, how do you tell what type of sprinkler heads and brands you have? And from my experience, the way that you can do that is just by walking your perimeter, and you should be able to see your sprinkler head on your landscape. It's not underground. It should be at surface level. I'm not sure if there are any other recommendations that folks have for that, but right at the top, it should say like Rainbird 500 or Hunter, whatever the make and model is. And then I'll leave it with one more question before we all sign off, but Owen is asking if it's okay. I think their example is about, is it okay to leave a citrus tree, or should the landscape be 100% converted for the rebate?
Pardon, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I think that they're asking if the landscape needs to be 100% converted in order to receive the rebate.
So no, you do not need to have it 100% converted. So I'm going to give you a scenario here. So our rebate currently is $2 a square foot, up to 1,500 square feet. So that means you can get up to $3,000 for your rebate if you were to convert 1,500 square feet of lawn area or active pool area. It would also apply for any active pools that you might be wanting to get rid of. What we would do is, let's say we measured out 2,000 square feet of lawn, and you had a pathway that was 500 square feet that you're going to implement concrete. That would not be a qualifying material as part of our program, because we want everything to be permeable to water, so that our groundwater, as we said earlier, can recharge our groundwater levels. And so we would subtract that 500 square foot concrete pathway at the end of the rebate program, and you would be left with the 1,500 square foot conversion. So similarly, if we measured 1,500 square feet and you put, maybe you wanted to leave a patch of grass for kids to play on, or a dog, or you just like the look, that would be fine. But we would come back out, we would measure that lawn and subtract it from the total rebate. With trees specifically, since it's not active lawn or pool area, we wouldn't consider that part of the lawn, the coverage of the tree. And so it would not like positively or negatively impact your rebate essentially. So we wouldn't measure the citrus area, the tree citrus area, and you could leave that tree if you'd like to leave it, or you could get rid of it if that's gonna behoove your design a little bit more, or you just didn't want it to begin with. So the program is very flexible.
Nice. Well, again, I'll be sharing all of these resources in a follow-up email. I think for now, in an effort to respect everybody's time, we're going to begin to close. But if there are any questions that come up for you at any time, we all are a wealth of knowledge here. I'll be sending out the follow-up email with resources and how you can connect with Valley Water and our city forest. And then I want to uplift some of our upcoming programs. We'll be discussing a variety of different water conservation techniques, from how you can capture and reuse rainwater to how you can efficiently program your irrigation timer. And then in just a few short months, we'll also be talking about tree care during times of drought, and even diving into laundry to landscape gray water systems. So we have a lot of different opportunities for you all to learn and improve your skills when it comes to water conservation and building habitat and healthy soil. And with that, I would love to thank you again for being here today. Shout out to our sponsors. We are a nonprofit with Daily Acts. Our sponsors take us far, but so do all of you, and so do our contract partners. So thank you all again, and I hope to see you at our next event. Take good care. And for our panelists, I did send you all a final email so we can wrap after the fact, but if you're no longer able to make it, I understand, and thank you for your time. I hope to see you all again soon. Take good care, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.